that I'm making this video, but here I am. I've touched on this a little bit in the past about Vigo's noise sensitivity and how he doesn't love trucks. And ever since we've moved house, it's almost like gasoline has been thrown over the fire of this sensitivity, and it has evolved into a full-blown phobia. So to start off with, what is the noise phobia? The best way that I can describe it is that when Vigo hears a truck or a bus, it's like he becomes a different dog. He tries to hide, he tries to get into the smallest corners he can get, he shakes, he won't take food. And the reason why noise phobia is so difficult is because it's outside of your control. I'm finding now even there are times when Vigo will seemingly randomly get very afraid and I can't hear anything, and I've now started going outside to see if I can hear something, and I'll go outside the house, and it's only when I'm outside the house that I can hear what he's hearing inside the house. So it's not something that you can like see coming and try and manage before it gets to you. It comes out of nowhere, and because it is traffic noise phobia and we live of course in a city on a road, this is just making the problem incredibly difficult to deal with. And this has a huge impact on our day-to-day life. You know, the other night my husband and I wanted to go out for a drink, so we wanted to bring Vigo with us. We thought, oh, it'd be a nice opportunity to take him out, and Vigo was having a great time. He was like wagging his tail and walking and just having a great time, and the moment a truck drove by us, he shut down. And so we ended up not even having our drink. We ended up just getting up and leaving. A question that I asked myself a lot is, how did we get to this point? And I think that there's kind of two contributing factors here. First of all, Vigo, I'm not sure if I've talked much about this, but when he first came home, he was sick and he had a little bit of a cough. He had kind of a snotty nose, and this meant that his entire vaccination schedule was pushed out. So whereas most dogs, I think, are vaccinated around like the 3-month mark-ish, Vigo wasn't fully vaccinated until he was 5 months old. And the frustrating thing with this was that our vet at the time was extremely conservative in her prescriptions for what we should be doing. So her perspective was, until your dog is fully vaccinated, you should not be taking your dog out anywhere. Whether they're on the floor or whether they're not on the floor, you should not be taking them out. So we were being told by our vet, do not take him out. And I remember having a conversation with her where I very bluntly said, you know, my understanding is that the first 16 weeks are really important for socialization. If we're going to be waiting until he's 5.5 months old to take him out, do we risk missing that socialization window for really important things and he ends up having some behavioral issues? Like, what's the bigger risk here if we take him out and keep him off the floor, for example? And honestly, that's what we ended up doing. For the most part, we ended up trying to take him out as much as we could, but keeping him off the floor. So we used the wagon. I mentioned the sash, which, as I said, he hated. He would just scream when he was in the sash. And all that said, despite our best efforts, I still look back and don't think that we took him out as much as I wish we could have. We couldn't really take him to city centers. We couldn't really take him to restaurants. We did our best, so we would drive, for example, to a parking lot in the center of Miami and open the trunk, and I'd sit in the trunk with him and feed him treats and try and just get him used to the sights and sounds of a city. But again, I don't think it was enough. And I think it's really, really hard because the day he came home, he was sick. I remember messaging his breeder the day he came home. There wasn't even a question of if he'd caught whatever he had with us. His breeder even admitted he must have had it when we handed him over. And I'm also mindful that it's really easy to be like, oh, I wish we had just taken him out. But then he could have gotten sick. We don't know what would have happened. Regardless, I do think that him being sick and his vaccination schedule being postponed and us trying to be as careful as we could be while also trying to expose him, I think it was just trickier to socialize him than it should have been. The other thing that I think didn't help is lack of awareness. So I think we had seen little flags that we were going in this direction, and I didn't realize, because even him hating to go for walks during the day, our training school said, oh, it's probably because it's really hot in Miami and this breed is incredibly intelligent. He probably doesn't like being outside for that reason. Well, it's now cooled down and he still doesn't like being outside. So I'm trying to not beat myself up, because even people who are much more experienced than I do struggled to put their finger on what was going on. It's easy to look back and connect the dots, whereas when you're going through it, it's much more difficult. And in terms of lack of awareness too, like when I think about my socialization plan, I literally had a checklist of things I wanted to do with him in that first 16-week window. Exposing him to things that we experienced every day was not on my list. Things like the garbage truck driving by. My thinking was, we hear that multiple times a week. Every Friday he's going to hear that. That's not something that I'm going to focus too much on. Instead, I want to focus on things like thunderstorms and fireworks and kind of like the hot button topics that everyone talks about when it comes to socializing your dog. I just thought, you know, in our house, he's going to have an opportunity to have good experiences with these sounds all of the time. And so it wasn't a priority for me to expose him to these kind of like traffic sounds. And it's interesting because his phobia isn't on cars at all. It's just big vehicles. And in our old place, this was something that we had noticed a little bit, especially on Fridays when it's garbage day, recycling day, and large item pickup day. But as I said before, moving to this new house has just absolutely poured gasoline on this problem. And it's for, again, things that I didn't really consider when choosing this house. For one, we're on a corner lot, and I feel so stupid looking back. It didn't even occur to me, oh, Vigo doesn't like the sound of trucks. Maybe a corner lot's not the best idea. The windows are single glazed here. They're not hurricane windows like our previous house, so noise travels much quicker through these windows than our previous windows. And then we also can't discredit the fact that there's just general moving stuff that's happening, right? Like, we have no furniture, or we have very little furniture right now, so there's an echo, so I'm sure sounds sound worse to him right now. Everything is new because we went from a furnished house to an unfurnished house, so there's all these new smells. There's a lot of change, and I know that it takes dogs a minute to adjust anyway when they move house. It just feels like a lot of things layered on top of each other that have led us to this point where it's like he shuts down right now, especially as I said on Fridays. So I'm not gonna lie, this has been something that has really been eating at me, and I think it's heartbreaking to think about the vision of life that we had with Vigo and where we are now and how far apart those two things are. Like, I used to have visions before we brought Vigo home of walking him to the golf course and around the golf course and walking him home. We can't do that right now. We've never been able to do that. And it's really hard as well to not beat myself up. All that said, I know this is a very long video. Two things. First of all, I'm going to be making a series out of us trying to solve this because this is like a high priority challenge for us. And it's something that I don't feel like there's a lot of conversation around. I feel like I'm really struggling, as I said, to find anyone who has said, my dog had that and we worked through it. What I am finding a lot of though is people giving a lot of advice, which is great, but I think something can work in principle, but then I'm really interested in, does it work in practice? So I'm hoping that this series can help fill that void and help other people feel less alone who are going through this. I'm gonna put on my scientist hat and really try and solve this. And even if we don't get to a point where he is loving trucks, I'd at least like to get to a point where he's not afraid to go outside and where he can hear a truck and not shut down. One last thing that I would say is that what I found helpful is reframing the situation. So as I said, I think it's really easy to look at it and say, wow, I'm such a bad dog mom. And instead of seeing it like that, I'm trying to offer myself grace and see that as soon as we brought him home, the situation with him was not what we were anticipating. It wasn't what we'd hoped for. And even if that hadn't been the case, because maybe if we had been able to socialize him as much as we'd wanted to in that 16-week window, maybe we still would be here today. I don't know. But I'm trying to see it, instead of me saying that it's my fault, I'm trying to see it as he was brought to me for a reason, and that whereas other people might struggle more with this problem, I'm better equipped to solve it. There's a purpose behind it. In the next episode, I'm going to be sharing what we've tried so far and what our current plan looks like. So I hope that you'll give me a follow if you are in this boat and curious to hear more about sound phobia and how we're working with it. Again, I would really encourage you to please message me if you've gone through this, and thanks for watching this very long video.